An original podcast from podlatino.com.
Funchal is the capital of Madeira, a volcanic island in the Atlantic that belongs to Portugal but sits closer to Africa than to Lisbon. An island of green cliffs that fall into the sea, of steep streets that rise and descend without pause, of people who learned to live with what the land and the ocean provide, which is not always much. A beautiful and hard island at the same time, as places tend to be where nature commands more than people do. In one of the humblest neighbourhoods of Funchal, in a small house where 6 people lived in a space that would have felt cramped for 3, Cristiano Ronaldo dos Santos Aveiro grew up. His father, José Diniz, was a municipal gardener and also the kit man for the local football team, Andorinha. His mother, Maria Dolores, worked as a cook and cleaner so the children could eat. They had 4 children. Money was never abundant. Sometimes it was short in ways the children did not fully understand, but felt in the weight of adult silence when certain conversations arrived. Cristiano was the youngest, and from the beginning, he was the one who most clearly carried football inside him, not as a hobby, but as a physical necessity, almost like breathing. When he had no ball, he found something to serve as one. When there was no pitch, any flat surface would do. When his siblings did not want to play, he found ways to practice alone because the alternative, doing nothing, was simply not something his body could accept. What his childhood companions remember is not only the skill, they remember the intensity. That boy did not play to have fun, though he had fun. He played to win, to be the best, to prove something that nobody had yet asked him to prove, but that he already knew he had to prove. There was in Cristiano, from very early on, that particular flame that separates those who are determined to arrive from those who simply go along to see what happens. It was not arrogance, it was certainty. A certainty that a child should not yet possess, but that in him seemed completely natural. Andorinha discovered him first. Then Nacional de Madeira. Then Sporting Lisbon, who took him to the capital at 12 years old, far from his family, far from his island, to a boarding school where he lived alongside other talented boys from across Portugal. For a 12-year-old from a humble neighbourhood in Funchal, that transition was a leap into the void. The adjustment was hard. His Madeiran accent, different from the continental Portuguese, earned him mockery from his classmates. Homesickness was constant. And then, as if fate wanted to add one more layer of difficulty to everything that was already difficult, the medical diagnosis arrived. Tachycardia, a condition in which the heart beats irregularly and too fast, which under conditions of intense physical exertion can be dangerous. For a footballer, for a boy whose entire life revolved around movement and physical demand, it was news that could have paralyzed him. The doctors recommended an operation, a procedure to correct the problem using radiofrequency ablation, which in practical terms meant opening the heart of a 12-year-old boy and repairing it. They operated, and 3 weeks after the surgery, Cristiano Ronaldo was training again. That moment, that return to the pitch barely 3 weeks after heart surgery, says everything there is to know about who Cristiano Ronaldo is and how his relationship with limits works. For him, limits are information. They are data that his body and the world provide, which he processes, and then attempts to surpass in the most systematic and methodical way possible. Not with recklessness or bravado, but with the serene conviction of someone who has decided that no obstacle is going to define his story if he can help it. At Sporting Lisbon, he kept growing. His performances in the youth team were so striking that he soon began training with the first team, and in August 2002, at 17 years old, he made his debut in the Portuguese league. He played with a maturity that did not match his age, with a confidence that was not boastfulness, but simply the natural expression of someone who knows exactly what he can do and sees no reason to hide it. And then came the summer of 2003. Manchester United came to Lisbon to play a friendly for the inauguration of Sporting's stadium. In that match, young Ronaldo performed in such an extraordinary way that the United players, in the dressing room at the end of the game, went to speak with Sir Alex Ferguson and collectively asked him to sign that boy. It was not a scout. It was not a technical report. It was the Manchester United players themselves, professionals with years of experience in elite football, who told their manager that the 17-year-old with the Madeiran accent was different from anything they had seen. Ferguson paid £12 million for him and gave him the number 7 shirt, the one Eric Cantona had worn, the one that carried the history of one of the world's greatest clubs embroidered in its number. For a 17-year-old, that responsibility could have been crushing. For Ronaldo, it was fuel. The years at Manchester United were the years of definitive formation. From the early criticism of excessive dribbling, he learned to be more efficient. From the physicality of the Premier League, the world's most demanding league in terms of contact and intensity, he learned to strengthen his body in ways that went beyond what conventional training offered. His United teammates recall that Ronaldo was the first to arrive at training and the last to leave. That when everyone had gone home, he was still on the pitch practicing the same movement over and over until it came out exactly as he wanted it to. 3 English League titles. The Champions League in 2008, the Ballon d'Or that same year, and in 2009, Real Madrid paid €94 million for him, the highest fee in football history at the time. He arrived in Madrid as the most expensive player in the world and responded with 9 years of dominance that the club and its supporters will always remember. 4 more Champions League titles, 4 more Ballon d'Or awards, Real Madrid's all-time leading scorer, surpassing a record set by Raul that seemed immovable. And in the middle of all that club success, there was one night that was different from all the others. On the 10th of July 2016, at the Stade de France, Portugal won the European Championship. Ronaldo did not play the final because an injury in the first half forced him off the pitch in tears. But he stayed. He stood on the touchline with a bandage on his knee, shouting instructions to his teammates, vibrating with every play, suffering and hoping the way those do who know the team is greater than themselves, even if for years the world had thought otherwise. When the referee blew the final whistle and Portugal were European champions, Ronaldo fell to the ground with tears in his eyes. Not of sadness, of a joy that could not fit inside the body. Then came Juventus, the return to Manchester United, and finally Saudi Arabia, where he plays today at Al Nassr at 39 years old, still scoring goals with a regularity that defies any reasonable prediction about what the human body can do beyond the age of 35. The recovery routines, the fragmented sleep in multiple periods to maximize rest, the nutrition calculated to the gram, the physical training that has no comparison in professional football. None of that is an accident. It is a system that Cristiano built over more than 2 decades, brick by brick, with the patience of someone who knows that greatness cannot be improvised. In the Portuguese national team, Ronaldo remains the captain, the reference point, the all-time leading scorer in the history of the national team and in the history of World Cups, with more than 130 international goals. Nobody in football history has scored more times for their national team. It is a record that he himself sometimes seems surprised to hold and at other times seems to carry as the most natural thing in the world. The 2026 World Cup is possibly his 6th. He is 40 years old at that tournament. And the debate about whether he should still be there, about whether it makes sense for a 40-year-old to compete in the most demanding tournament on the planet, is a debate he answers himself every week with performances that embarrass those who doubted him. Portugal has a generation of extraordinary players: Bruno Fernandes, Rafael Leão, Bernardo Silva, Diogo Jota, talents who in any other era would have been the undisputed protagonists of the national team. But while Ronaldo is there, everyone knows he remains the reference. Not because the others are not at his level, but because there is something in the way Cristiano Ronaldo understands big matches, decisive moments, the pressure of representing a country on the world's greatest stage that continues to be unique. A boy who cried because he was not put in the lineup. a teenager who had heart surgery and returned to the pitch 3 weeks later, a player who convinced his own opponents to ask for him to be signed, a man who at 40 years old continues scoring goals in professional football as if time was simply another opponent in a race he intends to win. This is the story of Cristiano Ronaldo. And the most extraordinary thing of all is that nobody, not even he himself, yet knows when it is going to end.